Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tsokfatso Kole. I am a financial controller for South African business unit that's part of the De Beers Group, and I'm also a 2019-2020 WISEP alumni. I would like to thank the UN Global Compact for this amazing opportunity where I'm going to convene a conversation with brilliant minds where we will be discussing the role of the youth in business and leadership in accelerating innovation in the SDGs in a post-COVID-19 world in building this resilient economy. How can we bring in the youth in leadership decisions? Why should companies prioritize their young employees? What is the importance of innovation around our SDGs? And is the youth the answer in building this resilient economy? I would like to welcome you all to our session, and please do join us in conversation on our social media platforms using the following hashtags: Leaders Summit, Collective Action, Global Goals, Uniting Business. The session is being recorded and will be available on the UN Global Compact YouTube page. Firstly, welcome. I'm going to introduce my panel who's going to help us unpack these questions that we have. We've got Tanya Dos Santos, who is the Head of Sustainability for Investec, and she was a 2019-2020 WISEP Team Champion. We have Rajesh Govender, who is a mechanical engineer for Anglo Gold Ashanti, and he is currently an innovator in the 2020-2021 WISEP intake. And last but not least, we've got Dr. Mutsidisi Mative, who is a lecturer at the Gordon Business Institute of Business Science, who is also and has been a mentor on the WISEP program since its inception in South Africa. Welcome to you all, and it's such an honor to have you.
Thank you.
To start off our conversation, Tanya, with your experience, I believe you have seen the company go through many seasons: summer, winter, autumn, and spring. What, in your view, or how can companies contribute to making young people feel involved, included, and well represented in decision making?
So to be honest, it's not just 1 year of seasons. I've been doing this for 20 years of seasons. So sustainability is not new to Investec. We have been on this journey for many, many years. But bringing youth into the discussion has really only happened with the advent of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that's what makes me so excited about the SDGs, because it really brings the youth in, the innovation, the tech, that passion that gets a little lost as you get older and maybe a little more jaded. And it really allows their passion to come through. So this is certainly not something new to Investec. Where we find we have been most successful is encouraging internally within the organization, finding those champions. So we already had a few champions before the SDGs came about. And they were pushing all the time. And I love it because they're pushing that senior leadership, they're pushing and they're challenging. So we actually created a Young Leaders Council, which essentially creates this platform in this space where the youth are able to participate in these conversations. We actually had one a few weeks ago on Zoom, and it was global. It was South Africa and the UK, and it just adds a different richness to the discussion. You know, you really get a chance to harness this cross-generational wisdom. So yeah, I think I'll leave it for that, but I must say that the WISEP program has also been another wonderful initiative for us to participate and tap into that youthful enthusiasm.
Speaking of the Youth Council, was it a leadership initiative or was it the young people who requested that there be a Youth Council?
I think it's a little bit of both. So the youth definitely were pushing to have their voices heard. We had been supporting the what's it called? I can't remember the name now, that summit overseas for several years, where we would send, the under 35s to participate, and they would come back and say, well, now what? We've had this amazing experience, but now what? And they were looking for a link to, what executive was saying and what they had heard in these summits. And at the same time, we found ourselves in a different leadership space we have always been a very open and honest culture. So we don't have levels or hierarchies. Our CEO would sit in the dining room. Anyone can walk up to him and have a conversation. So I think we're fortunate that we already have that culture, but it was definitely a top-down and bottom-up approach. And I must say the youth didn't give up. They kept pushing. The determination was there.
Relentless. Dr. Tsidu, I'll come to you. You have, I believe, a very exciting role because you tap into the minds of this leadership that we are talking about. You see different leaders from different industries, different organizations. And my question to you, similar to what I asked Tanya, is how can the company transform so that the young people feel more represented?
That's a very interesting question. And yes, you're right. I really enjoy being, behind these young minds to go through when they start first to say, what is it that we need to do? Moving from not knowing to this brilliant idea that they have came up with using the SDGs as a solution. So it's very interesting. I liked what Tanya has said about the young champions, but I'm thinking it shouldn't be about the YSIP actually coming into the organization saying, involve the youth. It has to be something that comes from the company themselves. It has to be an initiative from the companies. My example would be, I would like to see companies bringing in the young leaders in the executive, because I come in as a young leader and I don't understand the strategy. I don't understand the lingo of the executives, and but I want to grow in the company. So if the executive would invite the young ones to sit in, surely it's going to be a process. It's not something that will happen over a year or two. But if the young ones could sit in the executive meetings and listen to how the conversation go within the executive meetings and learn the language, learn the broader strategy of the company. Where is the company going from here? What are the plans of the company? These young ones will go back into their respective roles with a view, with a broader view of this is what the company is going, this is the language that is happening up at the top. So how do I implement at the bottom? And I liked also what Tanya has said about the CEO that's just sit there and allow everyone to come in and ask questions. I think those informal discussions as well of the executive and the young leaders would also contribute to making sure that the young ones are included in the decision making. So my example again went back to when I say they need to be included or be invited in the executive meetings. So the first year would be just to observe and learn. And the second year, for example, would be, okay, I've learned now, how do I contribute a little? And surely on the third year, that young leader will be able to contribute, because now they understand the language, they understand the strategy, they understand who's who in the company and what needs to be done. So that will be my contribution. Let them be invited and take part. Thank you.
Thank you. To add to what you said, and it's part of what Tanya mentioned, it starts with the leadership.
Yeah.
Tanya has mentioned that they've always been open-minded, they've been transformed versus where other companies find themselves. And to have a CEO who sits in the dining table, free to engage with anyone who comes through, is a leadership culture. And I think if we've got a leadership that's very open-minded to change, the conversations around bringing young people into a board meeting then becomes easier, correct?
Yeah.
Now, Raj, we've spoken to Tanya, who sits at the table. We've spoken to Dr. Tsidu, who grooms the minds of those who sit at the table. Now, for you looking to sit at the table as a young person, what do you think the company should do to bring you closer? But in addition to that, what should young people start doing? Because we often push the responsibility to the company should. The company must put this in place. The company must try this. But what are you as young people, or what should our peers and us be doing as the employees in our organizations so that the company can see our eagerness to learn and participate?
Yeah. I relate so much to what Tanya has spoken to. Investec obviously is very involved in the role of youth in the business cycle itself. Anglo Gold Ashanti follows a very similar process. And my personal experience, I mean, the fact that I'm on this panel today is as a result of some of the initiatives that companies are taking to create young leaders, to mold us for future leadership positions and that succession planning aspect of it. But beyond that exposure, us as young people, we need to take the initiative. We need to use these opportunities to further progress the role of youth in business. And some clear examples have occurred in recent times where we can see that youth is not just being groomed for the future. In some cases, the future is now. If we look at industries like the stock markets or the NGOs that are campaigning against climate change and violation of human rights, it's youth at the forefront of this. So maybe the future is now, and certainly we're seeing it in industry. So us as youth, we should be able to create our own forums to brainstorm these ideas for progressing ourselves towards that strategic leadership decision-making table. Clearly, as CD said, we're not at that table yet. And there's maybe reason for it. We don't show the benefits of it, but it's up to us to be able to create a framework to show the value that we can add in decision-making, not just in being groomed for decision-making, but decision-making right now. And it starts with us. It starts with us who's been exposed to forums like the One Young World Summit that Tanya spoke about, internal young leadership programs that Anglo Gold has put me through, that many of Investec employees have gone through, and many other corporates on the panel in terms of the WISER program have also spoken about these opportunities they've had. So yes, initiative is there, and we need to take this to the decision-making table to show the value that we can add to the business.
Thank you. You mentioned around programs, young people need to take the opportunities that are presented to them. With the WISER program as an example, Tidi, you've been a mentor since we had this in South Africa. Do you believe a program like WISER is part of the solution? Is it working? Are we seeing the results out of it? Yeah.
Definitely. With no doubt at all, it is working. The YSIP also, what I like about it, Raj explained that, mentioned that they need to come up with the program to actually start. And we, Tanya and myself said they need to sit on the table. So what YSIP does is to actually force the young ones to actually go and approach the seniors with no fear at all. I think YSIP works as that brand behind you that gives you that confidence to say, I can do this. Because you knew before YSIP you couldn't do it. You're like, I want to speak to the CEO, I want to speak to the executive, but how do I start? But that YSIP gives that foundation, that push to say you can do this. And it opens doors for the young ones. So definitely it is working. And I would also mention Maxine at Investec was one of my mentees. I had 3 from Investec. They were my mentees. And coming out of YSIP, I can proudly say that they were, apart from the organization's push also to promote them, to train them, but YSIP also contributed so much to making them the leaders that they are today, of which I think without YSIP, they wouldn't be as confident as they were, maybe to approach the executive as well. So definitely YSIP is working, I must say.
Absolutely. It is an honor to be amongst the Maxines, and well done to her, who's our pioneer. Very, very proud. Rajesh, with you being part of the program, obviously you're still part of the journey. Are you seeing the growth that Dr. Tidi is talking to? Are you seeing the ability to have conversations with senior executives that you wouldn't have had conversations with? Do you see that benefit through such a program as YSIP?
100%, Sego. It's as we spoke about previously, this program really opens doors for you. And Sidi mentioned something as well that's very important. It gives us confidence to be able to lean on that innovative ideas that we have burning within us. Many of us have such passion and desire to make a difference in this world, especially around the SDGs. And this program just opens doors for us. And a simple example, myself and my colleague, Jennifer, who's been on the program with Anglo Gold this year, we've had multiple discussions with many of our executive leadership team over this last 4 months that we've been on the program. And it hasn't just given us the opportunity to engage with them, but it's also given us tools and specific types of methodologies and thinking to engage with them in fruitful conversations, sometimes opening their minds up to opportunities that they haven't seen. The program itself, during our different camps, and not just the actual program, but the resources available to us, but everyone who's listening out there on the UNGC platforms in South Africa and in your own countries, there's so much of resources available that gives us tools to engage these senior leadership team and give them some solutions. A simple example that I can give you is around innovating the business models. That is such a critical part of trying to create innovation in the future. And Jennifer and I have used those models to engage our leadership teams on key issues like gender equality, like climate change, and they've seen the value in the different type of thinking we bring in because of the experience of YSIP. So certainly I'm grateful to be on the program, and I thank Anglo Gold for it, and I encourage all other corporates to also ensure that their young leaders are exposed to this program.
Thank you very much. The crux about our SDGs is to build a sustainable world. We are in times where we need to be building for the future. Sustainability, yes, is about meeting our present needs, but without compromising the ability for future generations in meeting their needs. Now, Tanya, in your role, head of sustainability, you have seen the journey and the different definitions of what sustainability actually means within the organization. What is the importance of innovation in accelerating our SDGs? We are 9 years away from our 2030 goals. Are we actually on track? What can be done in accelerating towards that? And why is it important to have SDGs integrated in our businesses?
So, I mean, the alphabet acrobat soup of ESG, CSI, CSR, every single year you would reconsider what you called your report because it depended on what was the lingo at the time. I'm very happy to say our first report was called Our Journey to Sustainability because that's the essence of what this is about. Although it's no longer a journey, as you say, it's 9 years away. It's now. The urgency is now. We can't continue seeing this as a journey. And technology plays such a critical role. And it's actually so interesting because you're connecting two things that are actually quite separate, youth and technology. You know, just innovation relies on technology on its own, and the youth, there's a whole different set of issues. But actually, the two together are what we need to solve for the Sustainable Development Goals. So for us, the youth are the ones who have grown up in this tech world. They are tech savvy. I'm not tech savvy. I still struggle with Instagram and, you know, all the different platforms that we should be using and downloading the right apps. And I'm only in my 40s. Can you imagine how hard it is, you know, for the generations above me? But your generations, this is natural to them. They will find the app, and if they can't find it, they will create it. And that's exactly what you need to solve for the Sustainable Development Goals. You need that vision, you need that passion, and you need this burning desire to solve for something that doesn't exist. And inevitably, that lands up being technology. Technology has the ability to scale. If you think of education, how quickly did access to education scale when it's put on a digital platform? So that's what excites me most about looking at innovations, looking at technology, and looking at youth. Because suddenly it takes you into the space where 9 years is not that far away. But hang on, look what we achieved just in the past year.
Thank you. And with SDGs, how difficult was that to integrate across all business units in a company? Is it easy, or are we struggling? Do we see more one department adopting it easier than another? How do we get that integration?
So, now I'm going to say your name wrong. Sheko. You see, when you get older, your memory goes, and I forgot that was your other question. Okay, so what we did was the socioeconomic issues in our two core geographies, so South Africa and the UK. South Africa, obviously commonly known, jobs, economic growth, poverty, etc. Climate was less of an issue at the time, but we were obviously already still conscious of it because it's the foundation to all the other SDGs. In our UK business, ironically enough, many of those socioeconomic issues are the same. So education is not the same issue that it is here, where it's access to education. There it's the level of, it's the quality of, it's the skills development. And youth unemployment was an issue. So we assessed the socioeconomic issues in our two core geographies. We then assessed our own business model. So it's very easy to say, oh, well, we must reassess our business model. It's not so easy to reassess your business model. Your business model is something that can be quite entrenched. We assessed our business model and decided, hang on, we have some core competencies in certain areas that are fundamental to attaining the SDGs. Infrastructure, mobilizing capital to the right places, renewable energy. Think of all the amount of work that's being done in financing the REAP program, property, green property developments. So there's a number of things that a bank can do, and you've got to assess. We're not a retail bank, so it's not going to be done through reaching the unbanked. That's not our business model. But our business model is that we have the ability to finance things at scale, and in particular, infrastructure. So we assessed all our business areas, and we assessed all the SDGs, and we narrowed it down to 6 SDGs that we can have the greatest impact through all our business. Every single one of our business areas has an impact, and actually usually has an impact across at least 3 or 4 of the same SDGs. And then over and above that, we overlay that with our operational focus and with our community focus. So anything we're doing in a philanthropy or CSI space must link back to those 6 SDGs. Otherwise, why are we doing them? We need to maximize impact in everything that we do.
Wonderful.
That is what I loved about what you're saying. And your passion is very inspiring, because the SDGs are part of who you are. They are not another tick box exercise that we just need to get through. And that is what we need organizations to appreciate, to say, for sustainability to be impactful, it needs to be part of who you are as an organization. It should not be another project that we take on. It has to be part of the culture. The person who works on the first floor must have the same understanding of someone who works on the 15th floor. My appreciation of sustainability must be aligned to the CEO's appreciation of sustainability. And that's how the company transforms, because we've embedded it in who we are. Now, speaking of trying to embed this in who we are, Dr. Tidi, I will bring you into this one, the classroom, because that is where knowledge gets shared. How do we change, and how have you been able to change the conversation? Because you are seeing different types of leaders come through. Are we embracing sustainability as part of our everyday language, or do we treat it as a curriculum? We do it, we tick box, and then we're done with it. Or how are you embedding that in your lecturing? And are you seeing the conversation transform over the years, and leaders appreciating that we now need to move towards achieving these SDG goals?
Interesting question, Tofo. The interesting part about GIPS is, yes, we do have the conversation in classes. For an example, we have a program at PDBA whereby we have the students who come together and have a project. They have to identify a challenge that will be, the challenge has to be solved with an SDG. You have a challenge as the students, but you use SDGs to find the solution, the business solution for that. So we do have a course like that at Gibbs campus. And another thing is also what I teach is social entrepreneurship. And within social entrepreneurship, I try to also bring in the exercises in class, the conversation in class, and say, let's identify our social needs and how can we use the SDGs to actually solve the needs, because in the end, they have to be sustainable. And going back to also maybe linking to what Tanya has said, we see SDGs as though it's this big thing. Whenever you hear SDG, you think climate change, but you can implement SDGs in a very simple way. For an example, you were sitting in a boardroom, and in that boardroom, we all have our bottle of water, and the bottles are plastic. But how do we implement the SDG? It starts by removing the plastic bottles and have a glass of water, a jar, and different glasses that whereby each and every person in there can just pour themselves water in the glass jar. So that is the small thing. The small thing, like instead of having a plastic bag for the rubbish in the offices or in our homes, you just have a paper bag, something that is recyclable. So it's small things that we can also use to implement these SDGs, both in our everyday life, in our workspace, and in our teaching as for an example. So it doesn't have to be, I think we need to change the mindset of our people as well, to say, even as students themselves, to say SDG is not only about climate change. The small thing as when you're traveling, you don't throw your stuff over the window of your car, because now it might end up in the sea. So, and one would say, but I mean, Joburg Sea is very far. Those are the conversation that needs to start. How does it get there? If it doesn't get to the sea, how does it I would say the injury is not the word, but how does it impact the environment negatively? So yes, those conversations needs to start in order to change the mindset. And without wasting any time, I do remember when I started joining YSIP, some of the students in the class or the delegates, they didn't know SDGs until they got to the YSIP. So that is the conversation I think that needs to start in the corporate. And yes, it's difficult to change the business model, but the strategy can be reviewed. There's a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if we change the culture in the organization, it will definitely lead to changing the strategy, because the culture goes across the units and it changes. It will also lead back to reviewing the strategy, because now culture is different. We're speaking SDGs as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. I love what you said about we need to take this outside. So with value, so I work for a mining company and safety is our priority, most important value. And what's emphasized is you need to be safe even at home. It's not about safety only when I'm in the office. When I leave the office, I need to still live the values of the company. Same with your SDG, same with sustainability. So the example you gave, we need to stop using plastic bottles. It's a conscious decision, but it's something that you need to apply even outside of the workspace so that you appreciate the impact, because we live with individuals. We can influence conversations within our families, etc. And if we bring this conversation to the dinner table as well, we're actually reaching more individuals than we would if we just have the conversation in the boardroom. So yes, I appreciate when you said the small changes. If you have a small child, have a recycling bin where they learn how to do the recycling from the age of 4. It doesn't change a lot at that point, but their mindset will change. And that is what we need to start doing in changing the mindset and appreciate that the SDGs are part of who we are and not a separate conversation that shouldn't be part of our lives. Rajeshan, you being on the program, you are learning and appreciating the SDGs. You have a task to go back into your organization and help integrate these SDGs across business functions. Would it be an easy task as a young person? Do you think, given the knowledge that you've gained on YSIP, it might be easier? Is it important that we go back and integrate? How would we do that? Because these are questions we need to ask ourselves. We have in these conversations, we've been exposed, but the practicality around it, given the organizations that we work with, would it be something that can be done?
Yeah, and it's something that has to be done, Seko. I mean, in my thinking around embedding SDGs within my company, and then I'm also in the mining industry, as you say, we've seen a huge change in our safety culture in the mining industry because there was a clear emphasis placed on safety as a whole 20 years ago, when we know the numbers in terms of mining safety incidents were unacceptable. There was a clear strategic decision at the executive level and across the industry, across the entire business landscape, that this industry needs to change from a safety perspective. A similar type of change, seismic shift, needs to happen in terms of the way we look at sustainability. And in my mind, being an engineer, when we start our project meetings, the first thing we do before any meeting is provide a safety share. Those of you who work in industry would know that very well. And we need to think about changing that concept and maybe starting a sustainability share, an SDG share as a start off. And that creates a culture of sustainability about SDGs and embedding it within your business, embedding it in each aspect of your business. In my line of work, we talk a lot about integrated planning when we're looking at the mining life cycle. Similarly, if we're embedding SDGs and sustainability into our business, we need to embed it into every part of our business process framework. Integrated planning sees aspects related to mining, engineering. We need to have clear focus on sustainability, where potentially in every project there needs to be some link to the SDGs, not just climate action, as CD mentioned. That's, I think, everyone's first go-to topic when we talk about sustainability, but there's numerous other aspects of the SDGs. There's 17 SDGs, and within a single business, you can touch at least 5. Tanya mentioned they talked about 6. Within our business, we look at about 7 SDGs that we know we can clearly define. And as young people, we've now been exposed to programs like YSIP and other sustainability programs. It's our duty to try and implement and slowly create strategic change within our business.
Thank you. What I love is we need to have sustainability shares. Let's the meetings with a sustainability share and give a practical example of how you've changed one thing in your household, and that can drive the change that we are talking about. Thank you so much for that, Rajesh. Dr. Tidi, your line of work is the social development. It's around development within our country and how we are going into this sustainable world as a country. If given the chance, young people have the potential to be entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. How can the private sector support these initiatives, and what are the best practices and lessons to be learned?
I have 2 answers for that. One would be, I'm thinking of entrepreneurs, whereby the companies would mentor, not only support through their social CSR. Please help me. I wrote it down. CSR, yes. Through the CSR, the private companies could support entrepreneurs. For an example, not only give them funding and management skills, because you find that most entrepreneurs, research tells us that most entrepreneurs fail within 3 years of starting. So, and you find that the reason is also lack of management skills. So when these private or larger corporate fund these small enterprises, they shouldn't only give funding and management skills. I think the criteria should be, what are you doing for sustainability? Criteria should be, what are you selling, either service or a product? How is your product responding to 3 things? There has to be 3 P: profit, people, and planet. So are you creating jobs, or will you be able to create jobs? Yes. And you'll be able to make money, get return out of this business. And again, your product, will it be harmful to the environment? And you find that some of the people, their products are or the supply is harmful to the environment. So the criteria should be, how do we teach entrepreneurs to use material? For an example, African print. You find that the material that made this is harmful to the environment. So train them to find the material that is not harmful, because we have to coexist with us, planets and animals. I mean, plants and animals in this small world. So I think that's how they can contribute towards supporting, mentoring the entrepreneurs. But when it comes to intra, I think that companies, again, they need to have a unit that is only dedicated to innovation and entrepreneurship within. Because now, for you to be innovative, you need entrepreneurs. You cannot be an entrepreneur and not be innovative. The minute you stop being innovative, you're now a manager. So they need to have a unit in the organization that is dedicated to entrepreneurship and innovation that will help them to be creative. And that also needs that unit has to use the SDGs to find innovative solutions in order to grow their business, depending on what the business is all about, whether service product business, whether a product-led business. SDGs are applicable across. So those entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, they should be using SDGs as their way to find solutions and to innovate in order to take the company to the next level. That's how, yeah.
Tanya, I'd like your views on this, because you are within the private sector. And I would like to know, as private sector, how can you support these initiatives that young people might be coming through with, it being intra or intrapreneurs?
So I think first off, entrepreneurship is not limited just to youth. And in fact, you often find entrepreneurship is more prominent when people have seen their kids through off to varsity or wherever they're going, and they have a little bit more experience and freedom, financial freedom to go and explore and experiment. I mean, I think what the lesson learned is that it's often good to then pair them up or connect them with the youth in terms of how they go about entrepreneurship. Because what we find in trying to fund entrepreneurs, youth entrepreneurs, is that they may have a great idea and they may have all the passion and desire in the world, but they don't have the experience, they don't have the wisdom. So they often fail, not just because of funds, but for a number of other reasons. They don't know how to run a business. They don't know how to, set up payroll, some of the basics of just getting a business going. So entrepreneurship is critical in building a resilient and sustainable economy, absolutely critical. It's one of the key areas that we focused on as a group for as far back as I can remember. You want to invest in economic participants, because economic participants then employ more people themselves. So entrepreneurs are fantastic for the Sustainable Development Goals. But for me, we have to be careful how we do it. So there's parts of our business that would look at doing that where it makes sense. We also have a number of programs within our what you were talking about, our CSI corporate social investment programs. For example, in South Africa, we've got the Startup School. So this is an online platform where you can go as an entrepreneur, you can apply, and then you can have access to, before you get to the funds, you have access to mentoring, to guidance, to, if you need financial inputs, if you're trying to put a financial model together, expertise, if it's specific expertise, if you need legal advice. And then through that program, if you are successful, then you will get funding. But then at least the funder has some confidence that, that there is some surety that you're going to get there, because you've had input from all your employees that sit across all different areas of the organization. So that's been our approach. And we do something similar in the UK as well. We also have an entrepreneurship program where we really give our expertise, our time. Volunteering, we're finding more and more people want to give their time rather than money. They'll give money, but it's not as satisfying. It's very satisfying to work one-on-one with someone and help them through to success. So that's one of Investec's approaches to entrepreneurship, is working, allowing our staff to get involved, to volunteer, and to really give those entrepreneurs, and especially those youth entrepreneurs, the support that they need to succeed.
What you mentioned is very critical. Sometimes when we speak of youth in business, a lot of people might think we are trying to move away and against, and we need to just learn. Someone has to pass on the baton, and it's a race. It's a journey, and we need to be part of the race together. The more experienced employees or senior executive with us who are inexperienced in certain areas. And to what you're mentioning, Tanya, is it's the appreciation of both. To say, I love your drive, I love your passion, but I'm also willing to give you guidance. And because I've got you getting guidance, then I've got more confidence in what you're putting on the table being successful. And that's something that's very, very key. This has been a very great conversation. Time is eating us up, but as a final question, we have about 4.5 minutes, so please keep it brief. We are young, we are passionate, we are brave, we are resilient, we are relentless. But are we as young people the answer to building this resilient economy? Tanya, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm glad you started with me because I think it carries on from what I was just saying. It takes courageous, very determined young people to push this forward and to take this agenda forward. But it also takes the wisdom, the risk consciousness, that measured voice in the room to really see it through. So for me, is it just the youth? No, the youth alone are not going to solve for these problems. We together need to do this. Every generation has a role to play, and we'll see through the next generation. The youth of now have a responsibility to the youth of, the next generation to pass this on. So as you say, pass the baton, yes, but we also need to change, what does that baton look like? What exactly are we passing on? And that comes from an intergenerational approach.
Thank you very much. Dr. Tidi?
Very short. I think Tanya said it very well. And I was going to say again, collaboration. As I said when I started that, they need to start first by observing. I mean, youth of today, or youth per se, they are energetic, they are innovative. I mean, technology is their middle name. So taking company to the next level, you really want those young ones that are very energetic, that want to be there and have enough time in their hands, that if you can take them as the older generation, as Tanya mentioned, you will really, really make something out of them. And surely they will open door. The baton will be clearly defined, that what the baton that we have to transfer to the next generation. So definitely, we need to see to it that we develop this youth.
Thank you. Rajesh, as a young person, do you believe you and your peers are the answer to building this resilient economy? And I just wanted to add one more thing. If not, what should we be doing to be part of the solution in building this resilient economy?
I can emphatically say there's no not involved in that sector. We must be involved in building this resilient economy, and resilience in terms of the world that we live in. I think many people fail to remember that the word resilient means that you are open to failure. It doesn't mean you're not going to fail. So you need to involve youth in these discussions about creating resilient economies. Us as youth, we must involve ourselves, make sure we have a seat at the table, because we know how to handle failure. Being millennials, being Generation Zs, we know how to pick ourselves back up very quickly, get back into order and start producing creative ideas again. So certainly, business leaders out there, Tanya and the rest of you executives, consider us. We've got the energy, we've got the passion, we've got the bravery that you need to create a resilient economy in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much. This was a very exciting conversation, and we could go on for hours. Thank you for the knowledge that you've shared. COVID-19 was a reminder to us that life is unpredictable. It forced us to be very quick in response, but what I appreciated is it forced us to be in one room and work as a team. We had the government come through, we had the private sector come through, we had our communities come through, and those are principles around SDG 17, collaboration. And what we are saying, and is key to us building this resilient economy, young people are not just the answer. Young people are part of the answer, but it's around collaboration with those that are also more experienced than us, bringing us into the room, sharing the knowledge and sharing the journey. It was really an insightful conversation. I really appreciate your time, Tanya, your time, Dr. Tsidi, and your time, Rajeshan. To those at home, thank you very much for enjoying this session with us, and please do enjoy the other sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.